Meta Perspective Podcast.
Pretty much.
Hello, and welcome to Meta Perspective Podcast. We're your hosts, Alex.
Evan.
And the girl. This is a show where we talk about deep and interesting topics and try to get to the heart of the idea through multiple perspectives.
But if you are joining us for the first time, please give the channel a follow and the video a like. We plan to do random giveaways, things like that in the future, so it doesn't hurt to stay active.
Speaking of staying active, don't forget to jump in that chat. We want to know what your ideas are for different topics. More than anything, we just want you to be part of this conversation. Because Meta Perspective Podcast isn't meta
without your perspective. Well, we are continuing our series on spirituality tonight, and we have a special guest.
Oh,
Hello,
I'm
Jack. I'm just friend of Alex, friend of the show, kind of. So,
long-time listener and supporter.
yeah. Absolutely. I've got some knowledge, I guess, on the relevant topics today, so I feel like I could contribute as a little bit of an armchair guy.
Yeah. So we're, we've touched on a couple things so far. Tonight we might keep it kind of open. Again, we do have the chat pulled up here, so if you guys are watching live, we can see what you say and respond to it. You can kind of chime in on the show. But tonight we're going to kind of touch into kind of the territory of, what a faith-based person and how their mind works versus someone who may not be, faith-based or have a belief or something like that. Because there's a framing that goes on where, you could even think about it like in the most simple terms of the afterlife. People that believe that they're going to heaven or going to be reincarnated or whatever that is, it informs the way that they act and, their reality and how they process and perceive the world in real time, and that influences their thoughts, their actions, emotions, and things that they would actually do that influences the rest of the material world. So two people in the same life situation, you could have kind of a faith-based person and their perception, and then you could have someone who is not, and their perception would be totally different. And that can kind of inform, how happy you are or what you struggle with or how you see, even like failures or overcoming adversity, that kind of thing can all factor into what could be like a crushing defeat versus, something that you could be a little bit more passively adapted to. So that's kind of, just a place to start, and we can kind of go wherever we go. But you have any initial thoughts on?
I mean, yeah, I think even just from basic psychology, like your outlook on life, how many options, like what are your options? If your outlook is, once I finish this level, I go to level 2, there's more. And like, this is just level 1. I'm looking forward to level 2 versus this is level 1 and all I have is level 1. Your outlook, you can still be positive, but I believe you're going to have to sacrifice some stuff. Like I'm not worried about death. Why? Because it just is what it is. Enjoy every moment now, take it in, and then that's it. I mean, that's great. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with, living in the moment and enjoying the moment. But into a lot of this stuff, does fall purpose. There is motive too. You only have one life, so what's your motive? Are you going to do good? Are you rooted in good? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different aspects.
That's a good one. Motive. Because I feel like on a deep level, I've always kind of thought that, everybody does something for a reason. Even people that are batshit crazy that do a lot of insane things, it's like, oh, that lady that drowned her children in the tub, she thought that they were the Antichrist babies, or what's that girl's name? Cynthia something, or starts with A maybe. But you know what I mean? Like even stuff that's crazy, people still do it for a reason. And so everybody has a kind of a motive that drives their life, and you know, even something as simple as like hanging out with friends or something to that effect. You know, there's kind of a motive there in the background. You know, maybe you're just enjoying your time and you found somebody that you align with, and you know, they become your tribe in a sense. But there are friends that are maybe like a little bit higher, you know, on the social totem pole than you, that you like to hang out with them because you get social benefits or something like that.
And then that person who's higher on the totem pole hangs out with you because they always feel like they can always feel that you look up to them, that you admire them, that you're jealous of them. And it's like, I want somebody on my side who's just my hype guy.
Okay, ego
so
boost.
it's like they use you, you use them. And at that point, it's like, definitionally, what type of friendship is this? You know, you could be like, this is my best friend, the best friend I've ever had. But when you break down what that best friend is, it could be kind of sad when you're like, well, that's not genuine. But then you start looking in and thinking, well, what is a genuine friendship? And how many people have genuine friendships where at least the other person isn't there for some off reason from what your kind of alignment in that friendship is, you know?
Yeah, and even to the extreme, you know, you have people like the idea of martyrdom, or, you know, like the Buddhist guy who lit himself on fire on the cover of the Rage Against the Machine album or whatever, you know, like that's,
He did it all for an album.
you know, like no one would do there's no like underlying motivation for a human being to do that. You know, in a way, maybe that person did it for, you know, it's supposed to be kind of a take on, you know, whatever social problems that were going on at the time, but it's also like,
Provocative,
you know, you only do that based on some kind of belief system or something that drives you to.
You could almost even say hate. You know, it's like the idea is like, I want to do this because, you know, I have love in my heart, but I see all this hate in the world. All I see is hate. I'm going to do this to really emphasize how much I'm focused on that, and I cannot stand the hate in the world. So I'm going to set myself on fire so that you guys understand. And it's like, that's a wildly extreme, forceful way to show that dynamic, you know, versus somebody like Martin Luther King, who just walks up and he's like, I want to see my kids play with your kids. I'm not going to tell you how to be. I want my kids to play with your kids. And you're like, damn, that's wholesome. Like, oh, that can also be like, maybe I'm the monster for thinking other ways. Instead of being like, look at that guy burning. Like, am I a bad person? This is changing me.
Right.
Or you can be like, what the
mirror.
hell? That guy's crazy. I don't want to be a part of that religion. You know, it's like, when it comes down to the message of setting yourself on fire, a lot of people would say, well, it's blatantly obvious what he's doing. A lot of other people are like, that's not how I interpret it. I think when you're aligned within that kind of proper motivation, sort of, it's more pure, and it sits with people. And I've always strongly believed that it's the heart that changes hearts. So when you see people trying to change the world, doing extreme stuff like that, it's like, what's the motivation behind it? Is it love? Because it's hard for me to say I would set myself on fire and end my life early so that other people can understand love. For me, all of that looks like it's a life controlled by focusing on hate. Not that I did it out of hate, but hate focus. I'm just saying that the motivation and kind of attitude behind a lot of stuff, I believe you can break it down. There's a lot of factors, but a lot of times I think we don't look into ourselves enough to say, why am I doing this? What is the motivation behind this? Am I insecure and that's why I'm hanging out with this person and being this way? Like, am I just going to keep doing this, or am I going to stop and be like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And what do I want to do? You know?
Yeah, because you can scale that. I mean, just to go on the example of the monk burning himself to death. You could scale that down to the minute. This demonstrates the difference of mind and attitude and perception around a faith-based reality. Is that, that monk obviously went through immense pain and ended his life. He's probably a Buddhist. He probably believed he'd be reincarnated or something like that, and that was his way to maybe get to an enlightened state. That aside, he did it for a reason, and it was going against everything that our human nature tells us that we should do, and society tells us that we should do. It was going against all that. But, if you scale that down to everyday life, where you're not burning yourself alive, it's like a faith-based person has the ability and the discipline to do things against, maybe against, not necessarily against their own benefit.
Against the grain.
But it's like a determination or a what's the word? Like a discipline. It's a discipline or some kind of, I have to do this even though I don't want to because I believe in something that motivates me to do that. Where somebody who is not that way, it becomes very self-serving. It's like, why would I do that? It's not going to help me. It's not going to bring me anything. So, why would I go out of my way to help somebody when I don't even feel good about it because it sucks? Like helping your friend move when you have a truck or, it's like.
But they'd rather go and go out with some friends, get blackout drunk, and then the next day just feel worse about themselves. Versus you help your friend move the next day, you're going to be like, I'm glad I did that. I didn't enjoy it while I was doing it, but it's the next day that was a good thing I did. I helped them. I'm not hungover. I feel like I did something versus the other scenario, you feel like you just wasted time.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that we want to do that we think benefit us or are going towards our goals leave us kind of more empty. And I think it's just a reflection that we're not going after what we want. And versus the other stuff when it comes to you and you're like, well, I don't want to do that. It's like, but it's coming to you and this person needs your help. And you would want that. And, a lot of times I've been in situations where I was like, I don't want to, but I'm going to because I'm trying to be a little better at this.
Yeah.
And then I end up having a blast. And it's like, I didn't know these people would be here. I didn't know that. Oh, we're doing stuff after. It's like, I'm glad I came in to help because now it's like I had a good time. And you wake up feeling like you made new connections with people that you like. It's a weird sense of the people I connected with last night, this is a new journey. They're going to lead me somewhere else. And it's like, even though I didn't want to do that, when I decided to, it's like this feeling of something just opened up for me in my life. Versus if I would have gone out and gone to the bar, done the same kind of routine, the next day I would have woken up and been like, I'm trapped. I'm in a cage that I just keep running and going to the watering thing. Then I play in the hay and then I eat some kibble and then I sleep and then it's the same thing tomorrow. And it's like the things I'm doing that I'm choosing to do just leave me feeling empty and repetitive versus if I switch it up and do something I don't want to do, a lot of the times it's more fun. And it's like if I knew it would be like this is what I'd be choosing.
Yeah.
Could I add something to that?
Heck
Yeah.
yeah.
So the way I would perceive it, at least a one way you could, if somebody doesn't feel that way, let's say they have a friend and they don't feel that sort of way, that it's not really some sort of useful way to engage as a friend, if you go and get wasted every weekend at the bar, as soon as you got a little bit of free time off work, it's like, well, let's go get wasted. Every week, party never ends. You can turn that around, and so can they, especially. It kind of only works if both parties do it, but if somebody needed assistance with something, most true friends, I think, would intuitively be if they knew they were available and they knew, presumably, if they're coming to you, you might not have others that, you'd be sure, why not? I have the ability. You'd do that. It sort of comes preloaded with a presumption of reciprocation. So it's like, it's not like, oh, they're doing something nice for me. Now they're going to expect me to do something nice for them. It's not in like a sort of adversarial tone, but it's more like that's kind of what true friendship is. That's what it's defined by. It's like some sort of what I guess are two different kinds of reciprocation would be mutualistic and symbiotic. So mutualistic is more like one-to-one, and symbiotic is a bit more proactive, where it's like you might do two nice things for your friends and they might only do one, but that might not be just because they're like shorting you or whatever. That might just be because they might not have the ability to reciprocate that. So
Yeah.
some people would, they might assume like, well, I did two nice things, they only did one. What gives? But that it could just be they haven't yet set themselves up to be enabled to do that yet. It could even be, in fact, that I sort of think about it like potential energy. They could even want to do more, but they just might not have the means to. And then that would deny you the ability to experience that. So if people help each other in the sort of way, like what true friendship in my mind would be, if people sort of mutually or symbiotically help each other, I guess an analogy could be those fish that clean like a shark's teeth.
Yeah.
They probably don't think of it like that, but that's mutualistic. They get food, shark gets clean teeth. But like if one goes above and beyond for the other, they lift that person up. Now that person, just by doing that through a little bit of sweat equity, is enabled to help the other person, and you just sort of lift each other up like that.
If I could add to that, for anybody out there who's trying to change their life and has like a friend in their life that's holding them back in some way or another, I mean, that's a big thing. An example, like you could both be like big drinkers. And it's like, well, I want to cut back on drinking, but I know they don't. I can't tell them I'm cutting back and I won't be drinking with you anymore, because I'm basically telling them I'm bettering myself and you're not. So if you're not going to better yourself, I can't hang out with you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy for that other person to be like, you're basically telling me that you've chosen a new life path and it's more important than me.
I can't do a podcast with you anymore.
Yeah. Damn. It's like, geez, dude. But if you change how you phrase that and go, you know what, like, yeah, I do have a problem drinking, but I'm going to try to control it. And I want them to see that. So maybe instead of us just going to the bar at like 3 p.m., like we always do, maybe this time it's like, let's play golf. Well, we can drink on the course. I'll get us a couple cars. And you're just driving in the car, just cruising around, going to hole to hole, playing rounds to get a little tipsy. And next thing you know, like you said, it's like, also boost them in that, be like, that was a good swing. That was good. Get them into it. So, and they might unlock a potential and they're like, I just sit around and drink and hang out with you all the time. But it's like, I'm actually really good at golf. It's like, yeah, I brought you here so I could work on my drinking problem, but like, you're really good at golf. Like, I didn't think you'd be this good. Next thing you know, it's like they find a hobby, you start doing it, and then you both just cut back on drinking. And it's like, hey, we didn't stop, but we only play once a week and we only have like 3, maybe 4 beers throughout that whole day. It's like, wow, that's a huge change from what we were doing. And now we're being more active. We're doing this. It's like you can keep your friends and change the way you live. And then over time, talk to them and maybe they'll both just stop drinking and just play golf and you'll just become golfers. But there's ways to shift. If you're a good friend. A bad friend would be somebody who's like, I'm bettering myself. So are you? And you're like, motherfucker, like we just got hammered last night. I know you blacked out and got traumatized, but like, I'm ready to go rally tonight. Like, like you can't make life changes and like give me ultimatums like the next day. I'm still hungover, dude.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I liked what you were saying about kind of the symbiotic relationship, because I think that does transcend kind of, the difference, you have a faith-based person or a non-faith-based person in their mentality and how they view the world. But friendship and kind of this, like almost like a tribal connection, I feel like that kind of transcends that a bit, where
it's a bit universal.
Yeah, like
you could have it with or without faith, I suppose.
Right, like we want society, or we want a social construct. We're used to or wired to help out the tribe for mutual benefit, and like you're saying 2 favors for one, it doesn't really matter. It's just that you know that in the future, if you need something, that person's going to help you, or that person's got some extra berries or something, like, but I think to take that a step outside of the tribe, because we're kind of like a global tribe now, the person who doesn't have any faith is probably less likely to help other people that they don't know, because there's not a moral or theological benefit to that.
Yeah,
Like
we're all in the tribe, but I don't have to make bread. You don't have to make shoes. We both just get it. So I don't need to say anything to you in passing because.
Well, not even within outside the tribe, like another tribe or something. Like you're not going to help the other tribe.
In the tribe.
Intertribal sort of associations.
Right. What I'm saying is that it's to kind of go back to the monk thing. It's like there's something about believing in something outside of yourself that causes you to do things for others without any physical benefits. But maybe you get a moral or spiritual benefit from doing that. But, as a society shaped around that kind of structure is a lot more friendly and helping and cohesive versus, now what we kind of see is, we had a country that was kind of founded on Christian, Western Christian ideals and morals and laws. And as we've kind of gone away from that in the modern age, I think you have people that are more, more nihilistic, more self-centered, more likely to screw you over than help you. And that kind of gets in your brain too. Like, okay, everyone's out to screw me because
It's dog
everyone's
dog.
out for themselves. So there's no sense of community or cohesion because we all just believe whatever the fuck we want, and we all just at the end of the day believe in ourselves. So that's kind of it's making the case for this kind of spiritually crafted view of reality where you have a higher purpose, you have an identity that's outside of your own physical ego identity, and it causes people to do things that benefit their life. And I think, mentally, we were talking about earlier before the show, about gratitude, things like that you wouldn't normally stop and think and process. The faith-based reality is going to be a more fulfilling mental experience as well as a physical and social experience, because in your head you're getting some kind of latent benefit from doing good things or seeing things that happen to you that are bad as okay, I just need to get through this because someone out there is looking out for me, or it'll come back around, or karma, or whatever it is. If I believe something, then I'm more likely to do something I don't want to do. I'm more likely to help somebody else, and I'm less likely to interpret negativity in the most damaging way.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, the tribe aspect. I mean, when you have a group of people, let's say you have a town, any rural town, and drunk driver goes off, ends up hitting this building. He survives. He's fine. He'll be all right. Broken leg. But the building was kind of a historical-ish building in that town, and everybody in that town was like, we love this building. It has history. It makes us feel rich with our own culture here in this town. Everybody gets together and helps build that town. That's old America, like you said, the Christian values. The people just know, we got to get together. We have to do this. This has happened. I can help. Now, when you split into that where everything breaks off, you don't know anybody believes, it becomes now like a 50-50 where everything's about me. So do I feel like helping you? Did I just get off of a long shift and I see everybody working on that place and I just look at them like, yeah, I'm glad somebody's doing something, and keep driving home? Or do I or did I have a great day? I got cut early and I'm driving home and I'm like, I got the whole day. I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I just feel good. And I look over and I see these people working on it. I'm like, I'm going to go help. the thing is that's not a foundation. It's situational, and it all depends on how I feel in that moment because it's about me. Now, if it is like older America where it is more Christian values, then it's not a question. You understand, like, oh, this is my community. These people are doing this. I'm going to go help. You know, but more and more you see people just recording problems that are happening. You see people, acknowledging, like, look at what's happening. Look at all this stuff in our community. Look at this stuff. And it's like, well, you're not doing anything either. It's like I just keep seeing videos of people just talking about it. Nobody is actively doing anything. It's like I'm so lazy. I'm not going to do anything. But on camera, I want to at least look like I'm trying to rally other people to do something. So if they don't, it's like, well, what's wrong with you guys?
Well, that you see that a lot too. So it's like the videos where they give homeless people money, and then it's for more money on the videos and ad revenue.
Clicks, yeah.
Or people that like go and drive by and they volunteer, but only because they want to seem more attractive to a potential mate or something, or they tell them about it later. So it's like, oh, if I do a good thing now, then I can brag to my, to my social circle later.
Which goes with motive.
So this is worth it for me.
It's posturing.
And that's the whole thing with motive too, is if we're talking about a spiritual aspect of something deeper in ourselves that we don't really understand, then what does it do to that equation? If I am walking around with globs of money that I've gotten from people donating for me to go help people. So I'm not somebody who works a 9 to 5 and, is paying rent and surviving check to check. I'm somebody who has tons of money to do this, and people gave me money to go do this. And if I do it, I get more money. I'll go be a good person for money.
It sounds like a mutually beneficial win-win.
But it's like, how real is that connection you're making?
Yeah.
Versus if you're a 9 to 5 and you see somebody struggling, you walk up, you're like, hey, and like you do your own thing with them. You're like, hey, do you have the time? They're like, yeah, it's this and that. It's like, oh man, I'm going to be late. Like, I realize, I don't have my card. It's in the car. I don't even have time to run to the car and back. Is there any way? It's only $1. They're like, yeah, I'll help you out so you can go pick your kid up real quick. And it's like, all right, there's no cameras. Like, I'm just going to choose because I could just tell you're going through something. I just wanted to make sure I was making the right decision. I want to give you this. That person's going to be like, I don't know what just happened, but like, basically you're telling me I just passed some good person test and I get money for it.
Yeah.
But that's a real genuine connection. You understood they were in need. You're not just walking up to a random person and giving them money and hoping they have a reaction. You have to wonder, how many people do they give money to versus how many they show you.
I was just thinking that. Like, you go up to a crackhead and he's like, hey, nom, 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 nom. And it's like, you don't deserve this.
I made a mistake. But for real, it's like, if you're giving somebody money out of the kindness of your heart, there's something in you that says they need the money. Versus me going around and giving money to people until somebody really needed it. It's like what you needed was a real human connection and the money. But like somebody to be like, to give you that real hope. Like that Jimmy Dart dude is probably one of the best out there as far as that. But even then, there's still this weird stigma. And I'm only talking about it because there's not videos of people who don't video it. So it's like, I don't know how many people are actually doing this, but I don't like the idea of like, hey, you can be rich doing what I'm doing. It's like, the message should just be to help people. Yeah. And if you're going to do videos, emphasize you're 9 to 5 and you don't have the money, but you're going to help people when you can. Then I'm going to sit there and be like, I could do that. I'm not going to sit there and be like, hey, bro, we could get a couple $100 together. And if we could get one good, if we could find one dude who needs the money and get a good reaction, bro, I think we could just keep making money. And then the videos make themselves, bro. It's like, okay, go really help people. It's like, how genuine is that connection that you're making with that person as, human to human in this real world? It's like, this isn't a business. You're trying to help a human being. There needs to be a pretty hefty level of humanity involved in this. It can't be motivated by a business transaction.
Could I give a bit of a conundrum I was in on my way here? So exiting the highway, I don't know what the road is, but I think you might know the one.
There's
on,
plenty.
On the shoulder on the left side at that intersection for the overpass of the highway when you make the exit, there's always, every single time I've come out here, there's always been one guy standing there and pacing up and down a little bit to try and get everybody in the leftmost lane to see if they can like hand him something. This one didn't even bother to have a sign and cardboard this time. Usually they have a cardboard sign with something on Sharpie written on it. But this guy, he struck me as a crackhead, not because he didn't have a sign or anything, or he'd looked a certain way. I didn't focus too deeply on that, but he was like, there were some weird motions he was doing where he was like flailing his arms above his head every like 30 seconds or so, and he'd be pacing up. He was pacing a lot faster than the dudes with the signs would. And so another thing is, I don't know what he was like taking a drag off of something, but he was hitting something as like a pen, and I don't know if it was a vape. I'm presuming it was a vape. And so, I didn't even like think twice about not even like most of the time when I see him, I'm like, these are very opportune locations to get people guilt tripped into giving you money. Oh, look at this poor guy on the side of the highway. I've got to give him something.
He's staring
There's
at me at the
psychology behind where those types of people go. It's like, it's not exclusive to those, but there's people who they kind of like metagame that, and they're like, okay, I can find like a McDonald's or something, and I can guilt trip people going in and out, like, please. And they might not even need something. Sometimes they're even as shallow to send their children to do the begging for them, even if they don't actually need it. And so it's hard to tell whether or not they're genuine. In this instance, just because he's vaping, that doesn't immediately make me think he's a crackhead. He didn't look emaciated. He, from what I could tell, he didn't look like he had any teeth falling out or anything. So, and even if he was a crackhead, in my mind it'd be like, well, would I actually be helping him if I gave him this stuff? Because he might just spend it on crack or fentanyl or whatever they're doing these days. And so that makes me hesitant to want to help, not because I don't want to help somebody, but because, first of all, regular people are kind of broke as it is. And second of all, if I did have the means to help you, would you just waste it, or would you actually put it towards something to get yourself out of the situation? You never know the answer. It's always a gamble. And so we do have services in this country for like food banks and some things, and the barrier to entry to those is a lot of the times don't do drugs, and that's one of the things that a lot of these people don't want to give up. And it's like, is it inhumane to not enable them by making those sort of rules? I don't think so. I think that's like a bare minimum responsibility. And so, those sorts of addictions, they can really destroy people. So you're in a roundabout way, they might not perceive it that way, but you're helping them by not giving them money, because if they were to make it aware to you to like, all right, I'm clean, I'll try to get clean, then they would be over there rather than on the highway. That's how I look at it. It's not that I don't want to help them, it's that they make me not want to help for them with the way they present themselves, or if you can tell they're obviously drugged out. So yeah, it's a tough call, but
yeah,
it sucks.
Well, I feel like that's also very metaphorical to, just anyone in general. So like,
well, I want to say to his thing real quick, exactly on what he was saying, is it's the same thing we've talked about before, where we like years ago podcast, where people will be like, I feel good because I gave this person money today. But if you really cared about that person, maybe you'd worry a little bit about like, if I give them this money, if like I could be the only person who actually gives them $20 a day, and that might be enough for them to go get drugs, and those drugs could make them overdose. And so it's like, if that person dies, like, and I could know that, it's like, would I still feel good that I gave them money and didn't care what happened to them with that money? I mean, that's what like you said, it's like, you don't know if they're addicted, but at the same time, I'm not going to look at somebody who's not trying to impress me, who's like, I don't shower, I don't find a way to make this work. I just need money. It's like, what you need is a new frame of mind to put yourself back together. Because if I give you money, I know more than likely you're going to get drugs, and I know there's a chance that I'm going to help you die. So it's like the moral, ethical thing really to do is to just be like, hey, instead of me just giving you money, could I buy you a hotel so that you could get a shower? I'll go get you some clothes so that you can look presentable. Like, you know what? I'm on vacation for the next 9 days. I plan to just relax, but it's like, dude, I'll help you get a job. It's like, I'll keep up with you. I'll get you like a burner phone for a little bit. Like, do I really care about this person? Because if I don't really care, I'm not going to give you $20 so I feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I don't care what your situation is and what's going to happen to you, I'd rather just keep my $20 because I'm hard off too, buddy. This America in 2026, baby.
Well,
but I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I think that's kind of it's metaphorical in my mind, at least, if you guys can follow me here, for an entire society that doesn't have some type of belief system or foundation. You're essentially all crackheads, receiving money from people that are going to go overdose on the money that you receive. So it's like, even helping people on that level, it's very transactional. It's very like
with taxes for welfare or something. Like, you don't know if they're going to use it wisely, you mean?
Yeah, or just like, if nobody believed in anything, and there essentially is no reason to help other people. So when you do help other people, you're kind of getting that hit of crack, and you're giving them that hit of crack, and nobody gets morally improved by the process. That we're just getting deeper into ourselves and more likely to seek out these opportunities where we get more hits of crack.
Yeah, you just keep doing more crack, and I'll just keep being more awesome. I'm so giving and great.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a, oh, I got something for free. Somebody helped me out. Like,
No doubt.
hooray me. And then the person helping them out, it's like, oh, I helped somebody out. Like, I'm a super cool, nice guy. Hooray me. But it's like nobody's doing it for the reason that they're. Or what were we gonna say?
I was just going to ask a question to either both of you. Were either of you ever, at any point in your lives, any form of like agnostic or atheist faith-wise, or have you
I was
mostly been
hardcore atheist.
Yeah, I think both of us.
both of us? I would say the same too, and so I guess any of us could, but I was going to try and steelman that perspective, which is like, just for the sake of challenging, to give some back and forth. If I think like, is somebody who is atheistic or even agnostic, which is like on the fence, they don't know, they don't try to make a claim whether or not they know, are they inherently, just because of their lack of faith, inclined towards not helping someone when they could? I don't know if that's necessarily true. I personally don't think it is, but it might manifest that way. I feel like in societies that have large amounts of like secularity or atheism, a lot of that is like cold hard math of like, what's the best possible way to accommodate everybody in this particular region that's like a state, like
Like a greater good kind of.
yeah, like a lot of Europe is kind of secular these days, even up until I guess more recently the United States has been a little bit secular, and China obviously is like no state religion. They're very
Like Taoism.
overtly, yeah, that culturally they might have the heritage for that, but like overtly these days, because of, I suppose, they're like political revolutions, they've ended up in sort of like a quasi-capitalistic communist state that's like very secular. They don't have state-enforced religion. In fact, even the ones that are familiar to their history, they sort of like tone down, except for little heritage sites, but they still have some pretty decent quality infrastructure. Not glazing though, I'm just saying, like they're, they seem to have a incentive towards taking care of their people, even if the incentive is not known. Materially, they're helping each other just because they intuitively recognize you're Chinese, you're Han Chinese, whatever. Like they do that in like a more of, maybe you could call that mutualistic. I don't know, but I would say it's like the bare minimum standard level of like civilization-wide assistance a culture can provide to itself is something of that nature. And I don't think it's bad because they're not lifting everybody directly out of poverty by throwing money at them, but they try to enable as much as possible the ability for the people within what they define as their culture, to at least have some form of ability to feed themselves or whatever, which, you know, they might not be giving them free housing with a backyard pool and all this stuff. You know, it might be some very meager stuff, but it's enough to keep them alive. And, you know, considering how dire things are in some other parts of the world, that actually does seem like quite a lot. And I think for the most part, any developed economy at minimum has some system like that in place because they have the ability to. And I would say that's like, that would be my evidence, you know, if I'm steel manning that position, that atheistic or secular people are not inherently unable to provide for, you know, or care about helping each other. You know, they do seem to, but another thing to consider is in a lot of those Asian countries, they do have very strict anti-drug laws, especially some place like Singapore. You know, they find you with illicit substances in some country like that, even something as like a little bit of marijuana, and they might actually put you on death row. That's how seriously they take some stuff like that. I presume that that's inspired by like the opium crisis that happened in Asia at the hands of the British or whatever. So, you know, all those centuries ago. So, you know, they might even go to that extreme extent. What might seem like cruelty might be like a preservation, like a preventative measure to protect their own people from getting hooked on what they perceive to be sort of substances.
I mean, that's a really good point, and that's a great example because, you know, that is, you know, there's something behind that. There's you know, you don't necessarily have to have like a monotheistic religion to you know, help other people, or at least like have a baseline community, you know, adhesion or something to that effect. And I think that's a great example.
I would say so like when I was atheist, like part of my belief is you don't have to be part of a religion to just be a good person and want to help people. What I didn't understand about myself, because I didn't understand myself outside of myself with God, was that belief of you don't have to be religious to be a good person and want to help people. Even in those lanes, a lot of times it's still transactional. Even, you know, if it's not transactional, it's situational. I'm going to help in the situation because, you know, people I admire or people I'd want to align with, you know, are here. Let me display how good of a person I am. It's without me knowing, there's always an ulterior motive because I don't understand what true love of God is. I don't understand what true goodness is. So to me, I can define goodness as just helping people. It doesn't matter what the reason is. Helping is helping, and that's wrong. It's wrong. And I know that now, because everything that I did to help people was like, looking back, a lot of times I wasn't really helping, you know, like giving a homeless person money. It's like, what am I really doing to help them? Are they going to use that because they're saving up their money so that they can put a down payment on a house? Probably not. He's at the same corner every day. Like, the guy's probably just has an alcohol problem, and I'm just sitting here like, here, go get some drinks tonight. Like, it's like almost embarrassing that I'm doing it suddenly. It's like all of the things that I could look up to myself for. It's like, but what is the underlying reason? Yeah. When you bring a faith into it, specifically like a Christian-based religion where, at least a religion where there's a God outside of you that says there's a level 2, buddy. So like, you're going to get to level 2 with full gold armor, but only if you max your character out in this life. And it's like, well, how do I max my character out? God's like, you have to be pure. How do I do that? The world is telling me to just indulge. Yeah, but indulging hurts you, doesn't it? Yeah. So why are you doing it? Because the world's already broken me down, and that's how I cope, is with the stuff they tell me I need to do, and they tell me it makes me cool. It's like, again, what are you doing? You know, it wasn't until I understood love outside of myself that I was like, I want to help other people because of love, the definition of love. If I love myself now with a genuine, pure love, not like not like a self-righteous or
Yeah,
egotistical, love, but like a genuine, deep-rooted just love for my life, an appreciation for my life. That has to extend, because if I love myself for my foundation of being and the life that I've been given to have, it doesn't matter if you're using yours in the way that I would want you to or not. It's the fact that you have a life, and I appreciate the fact that you have a life, and I can love you. And when I see you struggling, I can genuinely want to help. It might not be the help you want, but it's going to be the help you need. And it's hard for me to say that as an atheist, it was possible for me to do that. While you can still do good things and like be like, like I'm Bill Gates, I want to go help Africa with vaccines, and then you find out it's like, oh, you're using people as test subjects and people are dying, and you're not talking about it and you're covering it up. That suddenly is evil, what you're doing. And it's like, how much of what we see that's good in this world is actually good? To me, it just comes down to genuine love of being like, I want to do this because of a foundational belief I have that transcends me. So I'm not doing this because I'll get something out of it. I'm not doing this because, of how it'll make me feel. I'm doing it because I honor love. I honor this higher vibration. None of us really understand what reality is, but I do know one thing. Love feels a lot better than anxiety, depression, fear, and hatred and anger. Like, love is like the vibration, the energy, whatever love is what I want to focus on. So if you're helping somebody just out of the idea of love, separate from yourself, just the idea of love, to me, those are the situations that make the greatest impacts in another person's life, gives them hope, that they can feel that love. You like share it with them. And then they just break down, open up, and all this trauma comes out, and they're like, I can move on. It's like because somebody made a genuine, real connection. So again, it's like for me, it's hard to think of myself back when I was an atheist as being capable of doing any of these things outside of me, because I didn't really understand an outside of me. So everything I did, whether I was aware of it or not, had an underlying layer of me. I'm going to help you because all of these cool people in the room. Yeah. I'm going to help you because, it'll give me a boost in my YouTube,
Right. And then that's kind of, like, I would say that was, before I came maybe more towards the spiritual side, or at least like an atheist version of myself at one point, kind of thought the same thing. I think things were I would do a lot of things that were mutually beneficial.
I think everybody.
So it's like, if I help you and it makes me look good, then do that. I kind of weighed things in that way. And, to kind of get, because you brought up kind of some emotional things like anxiety, depression, all this stuff. And, we've been talking a lot so far about like the external kind of society-wide dynamics, but I think we should focus a little bit on the internal part of that too, where, it's having some kind of a foundation, at least where you don't feel like you're acting alone in this world. You have some type of, a higher power or something in mind that can help frame whatever fucked up shit goes on in our minds. Cause like we come from a Stone Age brain, and, you know, a lot of the times, all of these things that kind of plague us, these emotional things, these thoughts, all that, it's all based on a time where, you know, you could die at any moment.
I mean, it is also trained to us through television and movies of people reacting the way you should react, the way you would react. And once you get that in your head, you're like, God, react that way. It's like, why? Why wouldn't you react better? Because I'm not Jason Statham.
Yeah. Jason Statham.
Nobody talks about him.
Yeah.
I just want to bring him back up, making you relevant again, buddy.
The beekeeper.
Let's make
The elevator worker.
make Jason relevant again.
The social worker. Jason Statham. But yeah, so yeah, I mean that's something that we should touch on tonight, because it's not just about the external. That's kind of, it does something for society. It is a factor, but
The internal is definitely the biggest factor.
all of the, like, you know, somebody who has a higher purpose or a higher belief in a higher power. You know, we kind of started this whole train of thought based on, you know, willing to sacrifice or willing to do things outside of your own benefit for other people. But, you know, if you could just bring it into the individual level, that's something where, you know, you're more likely to do things against your own benefit for your own benefit. You know, like, you know, on a discipline level, you know, working out is kind of a very shallow example, because there's a physical benefit. Obviously, it's hard. It's not really like you're really going out of your way or sacrificing much for that, but you are putting in the effort. You are doing something that is taxing and hard to do for a benefit, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a faith-based person. So that's kind of a bad example, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, the having some type of spiritual backing allows you to process the world in a different way than somebody who is secular, or somebody who is, you know, does not have a foundational belief. Because every interaction that you have, every life situation, you're going to look at that in a framed way. So, like, I keep kind of bringing up this idea of, like, responding to negativity. You know, like, for me personally, you know, the last year of my life has probably been one of the hardest years I've ever had to deal with, because I've just been I'd like take one step forward and two steps back. Like, I kept getting knocked down.
Yeah, patio looks good though.
No, yeah, like,
Yeah,
you know,
patio
but
looks good.
see, I'm still working through things. I'm still accomplishing things that I want to do, but life for the most part has not worked out how I wanted it to. I'm having to deal with these problems, and then I'm getting setbacks, and it's been one thing after another. But, like, my mentality is kind of an arete, like, just deal with it and get through it, because, and focus on the good things that are happening, because that's, you know, I'm not going to be defeated by these external events. I have autonomy, I have control, and it's based on something that's not just me, myself alone in this world as a conscious floating head. You know, it's like I have some type of spiritual backing where I know that this is going to come around, where I just stay the course, I do what I need to do, and when the problems come my way, I can deal with them and I can get past them, because I know that I'm working towards prosperity. Like, something is coming, my moral and, you know, physical efforts and all that I'm doing for myself and, you know, for my fiance, for my friends and the people I care about, all of this stuff that I'm working towards is going to come back around, because I believe that. I'm not just in a soup of chaos, you know? And so I think that's kind of, you know, there's an internal benefit there that's not as tangible as like a society-based structure. But, you know, the faith-based person is going to be a lot more resilient and appreciative and in tune with the good or the bad, versus somebody who's not. They might almost do a manic depressive kind of bipolar effect, where, you know, when things are really good, you did something great, like, you feel really good about it, but then when something bad happens, now it's the world ends, and
It's like being at work and being like, man, today is just like everything's going so smooth. And then all of a sudden like you start getting hit with lines. You start getting hit with all this business. Things get busy. You cannot handle it. You're getting stressed, and you're like, what the heck? Why is it going like this? Why aren't things more streamlined? Why am I having these problems? It's like that. When it comes to spirituality, a huge thing I want to push to everybody is it's layered. You aren't a normal person and then you become spiritual and you flip over and now you're spiritual. It's layered. Like where I'm at now, I can see layers above me. I can see all these different versions of me that just get better and better and better, and I can see exactly how to do it. And I can see how hard it is. And I can see what I have to sacrifice to get there. And I'm willing to do it, but it's a process.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think like I need like a one thing that just like fixes it all. And it's like, well,
The finish line.
yeah, the number one thing you do is learn to love yourself. Once you love yourself, then you have the motivation and the appreciation of who you are to take care of these things and go, I'm going to start organizing what I need to do and figure out how to do it. I want to do this, but now I love myself enough to get myself out of it. It might take time, but I'm going to quit smoking cigarettes, or I'm going to quit drinking, or I'm going to quit whatever it is. Not tonight though, but
Not tonight, though.
Maybe tomorrow.
but that's the idea. Is
One
it's
of these
like
days.
it is layered. So what I've learned about my spiritual journey is as you go to God, I mean, the Bible it's exactly right. You have to give yourself up and replace yourself with God, with this energy. So in other words, I'm too hardened of a heart to really harness true love. So I have to fix that so that I'm a Formula One car that doesn't run. And I know how fast I can be. But I also know what I need to fix in order for things to work in synchronicity, to work properly.
Synchronously.
Thank you. What are you, a Rolex? But for things to work properly, I know what needs to be fixed, and I know how things need to be aligned. It's like we all know it. Deep down, we all know it. But the world has taught us there's not enough evidence or weight to support following that path that the crazy religious people follow. But in reality, it's just, if I want to, if you're going through certain stresses of the home, it's like I have to get rid of certain parts of me that want the control. I need to let go of the fear of the situation that's happening. It's like religious people don't repeat stuff unless there's truth in it. Let go and let God. Like, it's a true thing. When you're in a situation and you're like, how do I feel anything but anxiety with what's going on? This is how. Let go and let God. Focus on God. Just focus on something greater than you that knows. If there is something out there that loves me and wants the best for me, and it created everything, but I'm getting anxiety from a moment that I created. Like you said, things aren't working the way you planned. You had an idea, and it's not working out, and you're getting stressed by your situation. So when you get these situations, basically it's like saying, hey, God, I might not have done this the right way because I planned this out years ago, and I'm a different person now. So I might not be doing this totally properly. I'm going to let go. I'm going to relax. I'm going to have faith that you're going to rewire this and it's going to fall back into place, and those wires are going to get reconnected. And when you let go and you let all of that anxiety go and you let him take it and you relax, next thing you know, you get a call. And it's like, hello? And it's like, hey, this and that. We're doing this thing. Could we do this at your house? You'll get this done for free. And you're like, did you know I needed a new roof? Like, did you know that this almost ruined my life? But I let it go, and then you came to fix it. It's like, that's how it works, but the only way it works is you have to be an outlet for that power, and you can't be. And it's like you had brought up on one of the last episodes recently, how fear and
Bravery.
Bravery. Fear and bravery are the same firings in the brain, but they're totally different things. You cannot experience them at the same time. You can only experience one or the other. They're two sides of the same coin.
Well, fear can turn to bravery, and bravery can turn into fear at an instant because it's the same physiological.
Exactly. It's two sides of the same coin, but you can't have both sides at the same time.
Right.
That's interesting.
And
It's like a fight or flight,
It's like so when you think of like a dimension, right? If you think of like a 2D or 3D graphing calculator, you get the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
Bravery and fear are like the inverse of each other.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that might be like a connection that you would have if
This
you
is
think
the
about
God
fight or
code of-
flight.
this is how everything works. This is the God code. I'm telling
It
you,
always
black
works in
and white,
dimensions, right?
black and white, up and down, positive, negative, everything follows this. Your moods, your thoughts, everything follows this pattern. And when you can understand something you understand, then you can understand the opposite of what you
Even
don't.
in physics, matter, antimatter, which we know exists
Yeah.
now, but it's still a little bit mysterious. But
Polarity.
yeah,
Positive,
yeah.
negative.
Magnetic field of Earth, the magnetosphere. It's always, I would even say, as much as we might not like to think, but because it seems a bit reductive when you think of it this way, it still has its own detail to it. But even something as human scale as politics has things of that nature. There's political coalitions and spheres. The only reason it ever seems to be that there's two sides fighting in like any particular war or whatever. There might be factions underneath doing their own little things, but the only reason it seems to be that there's two broader sides fighting is because there is some innate polarity, unfortunately, with the way that politics currently works in the modern age. And that's for other factors, but I'm not going to tangent them.
Yeah, if it makes sense, the God code is basically like a color sphere. There's a white and there's a black. There's only two, and they're the perfect opposites of each other. So you have color and you have shades of color. You have everything in between the sphere. So there's all these different factors.
It's a gradient.
But at the same time, that white and the black are the foundation that set the properties for anything in between to exist. So if you can understand the white and understand the black, everything in between makes sense. That's why I believe. For me, I know it to be true from my experience, but that's why I believe Christians all kind of had the same view. When speaking of like a true Christian, somebody who's had an experience and is like, no, it's unquestionable. Like, I follow Jesus. That's it. Like you're not going to shake me off the conversation because I see where it goes. Versus somebody who says like, I'm on my way there, but like I don't know if Jesus really existed. It's like, well, what do you think Christian is? It means Christ-like. It means the whole thing's about this one guy. So if you don't believe that, it's like you're shakeable. I can manipulate you because you don't have a foundation yet. You don't understand like that, the definitional. You don't understand the definitional truth
It's
of
even
life.
in
You don't understand the white and the black. You haven't had an experience or an encounter with God. So you haven't felt that pure love. So you don't understand white. You understand aspects of black, but when you understand white, like that's what did it for me. Was when I experienced the foundation of white, I was like, I know how good things can be, and I want that. And that led me to repentance. Before I even understood what repentance was, I was just trying to figure it all out. And then God showed me the pure black of me internally, like through meditation, and it was hell. By definition, it's what I believe hell is. I believe I've seen it. But he pulled me back up to the white right after and took me back. And then I was able to understand all the colors in between. And through that, I understood my own psychology. I'm telling you, this helped my psychology, my mood, my everything way better than other stuff ever could. And even most psychiatrists will say, like, the science is coming out now that it's been like legalized, that they can research it, but LSD and stuff like that. It's always been known that like having like an LSD experience could be more influential to you than like years of therapy. one experience.
Yeah.
Because of how
heard some stuff.
it kind of rewires your brain and reframes everything back to its foundational point. But I'm saying, like, this experience of repentance was way beyond that. It was like the raw version of me in every aspect, and it's like, here's how you work, and it's like, I can't argue with that. That's exactly how I work, but I can't work like that anymore now that I know how I work. It's like, I got to fix that because that's slowing me down. I got to do this. I got to do that. Suddenly you understand the problems. You understand how to fix them because you understand the foundation of white and black. So now all the colors and everything you can fill in your mind. You're like, oh, no, I already see red, and then red goes up to a pink, and then goes down to a dark red. And if I go this way, it goes to these colors. I go through an orange. If I go that way, I go through these. You know what I'm saying? It's like suddenly you understand the framework of your mind. And next.
Well, I didn't I feel like you had
I gotta pee anyway.
You had something to add.
Yeah, I kept going. I'm sorry.
Me?
Yeah.
So I was just going to say in response to what he was saying about like what it means to be Christian, it's even not so much specifically just the definition of what it means to be Christian, because everybody can debate that. It's it is what makes up the word Christian itself. So if you're familiar, either of you, I'm sure you might have heard in passing, or you might already know it, the word etymology. Maybe I'm butchering the way you pronounce it, but etymology, etymology. It's like the way you dissect words into its constituent parts, like the prefix, the suffix, and I guess the meat in between.
Yeah.
And it's how you basically infer what the word itself is supposed to refer to, in lieu, I guess, of the definition. So if you only have the word to work with and you don't have the definition on hand, if you understand enough about what goes into construct the word, Christian is a very simple one, because it's like Christ, like you said, Christian. You've got the Christ prefix and then the Ian suffix. So it's like, I don't know precisely what it is, but essentially the suffix IAN, that would be like, you are like some entity. If you believe that you are Christian, you associate yourself with the label Christian.
Yeah, like libertarian or like.
Yeah, libertarian.
There's other examples of that.
I guess American is similar, but it's
aligning
instead
yourself.
of IAN.
Yeah.
And so, that refers to you being somebody who tries to, at least the way I perceive it, tries to adhere to Christ as the figure, as the person and all the stories about said person in the Bible. You try to adhere to the values that person represented or embodied, through all the stories that they tell about him healing the lepers, him, trying to, I guess, like, drive out the demons from people that he was helping, or I guess, I don't remember what they referred to some of the women as, but, there were some women who, I guess they had been, like, persecuted by their surrounding community, and they were about to be stoned, and he's stepping in as this person that sort of embodies and represents these like transcendental values of like, who are you to persecute these people and all that stuff. But that's not to say go indulge, because you're all sinners, so sin as much as you want because you can be forgiven. It's a very nuanced type of personality that Christ himself embodied, which was like, he knew intrinsically that human beings are drawn towards sin just by what is available to people, and what they're, if there's like something salacious, they will be drawn to it. If there's something taboo, they will be drawn to it. If there's something, unhealthy or bad for you that might be fun, a little bit of Dionysus wine, they might start sipping it a little bit too much and go crazy like these beers. But they're drawn to these things, and it might be sinful to which extent they indulge into these things. And yet even Christ himself had wine at the Last Supper, right? Or he turned waters into wine. Like, so to me, what I think he represents is some level of like, how would you say, like modesty, or I
like
guess
a moderation.
Yeah, moderation is the right word. He represents like moderation, but also like a sophisticated spin on that. So it's like, there's some people who they'll be like, oh, I only had X amount of beers this week, or I only smoked this much this month, And to them, they think that they're stable because they have it rigid. But it's like, I feel like Christ, he's a little bit more than just that, like, very scientific. He knows that even something like that is like, it almost seems more ceremonious the way in which he ever engaged in drinking, I would say. There's some people, they drink every day. There's some people, they drink multiple times a day, or smoke, or even some other type of stuff. They might snort something. And that's not, in my mind, anywhere close to Christ-like. But I would also say that if you're like cookie cutter clean, you're just super Puritan, you've never done anything, and then you get your nose lifted and you look down upon those that have done anything.
Yeah.
That's also in a different sense. You're not non-Christ. You're not failing that like Christ-like embodiment because you haven't done anything. You're not. It's not that you're too good for God. It's like, it's the way that you engage with people who have done these things. You think you're better than them.
The
you judge them
judgment.
differently. And that is what makes you not Christ-like in a different element of who he was. So it's like,
Yeah.
he's the sort of like, I wouldn't say perfect 50-50, but he's somewhere within the gray between white and black. And that enables a Christ-like figure, or somebody like a Christian who tries to embody that, to, I guess, be a little bit more humane towards either. Somebody might be a total druggie and they'll look at somebody who's never done anything. And I've known this type of person before a few times in my life, and they're like, oh, you're a square, or, oh, look at you, you've never done anything. Look at this guy, mood killer, I bet you're fun at parties, right? You don't do anything, Mr. Sober. And, it's not that they're pressuring, it's that, like, in a way, whether or not they really mean it, it comes off as you're lesser because you haven't done anything.
Right. It's a moral high ground.
It's a cultural thing. Oh, you haven't slept with that many women or men or whoever. And it's like, look at you, Mr. Virgin. It's the same as saying Mr. Sober. It's like, you haven't indulged to the extent that I have, or what is common in this culture I'm around. That's a way essentially to say, like, you are lesser than. And that is something that, as like a more, I don't want to say neutral, but a more like less judgmental Christ-like figure would be, they wouldn't concern themselves with that, because that's not like the business of somebody who tries to be
right.
Christian, from my interpretation. So, not to yap too long on that, but like,
No, it's good.
if because I figured I'd come on here because I understand spirituality to some degree, especially Christian stuff, since I came from that world.
Yeah.
I was born Roman Catholic. I don't think I fully finished it yet with all the little things that they want you to do. But
Yeah.
then I went into like a steep atheism, into an agnosticism, and then oscillating ever since. And then these days, sometimes I'll be like, I don't know, I call myself everything from a non-denominational Christian to a non-Abrahamic theist or deist or something. And so I guess I float around some form of gray, but I think that is what I took away the most from reading anything about the Bible or Christ himself, was that, rather than trying to prove how pure you are or how impure you are, which is obviously the closest antithesis to Christ, like, is look at how bad I am, you're more focused on, like, less than look at how much of this or that I am. You're focused on completely external things. Like, Christ was always trying to help others. It was almost never about himself. When it was about himself, it was him talking about himself essentially to be like answering others' questions about, who are you? And he's like, I am what I am, or I am who I am. And it's like that sort of I am, and then people infer from that he's God. He's not focused on himself at all, it seems, from their perspective. The very few times they engage with him where they directly ask him those types of questions, they're like, so, who are you to say you are this? Or, he doesn't even really make those claims outside of when they ask him.
Yeah.
And so when they ask him, they're like, sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I was
going to say
something real quick, but I was going
to. There are verses where he indirectly says, like, I am God. The big emphasis with the Christian religion is giving yourself up for Christ. So what does that mean? You know, if I'm giving myself up, if God exists, but we don't understand how to be like God in this reality because it's been perverted, and now we can't find our way back. So God gives us a physical example of God. God manifests himself in physical form. That is a human being absent of their own identity, where God is fully interceded. So the idea, what I believe the Bible means when it says be Christ-like, follow Christ. A true Christian will say, I'm a follower of Jesus. I follow Jesus. It's not about a religion or what people say or all these. There's a guy and he was a certain way, and I have the example. I don't need other people to interpret things. I have the example of what is pure good, a purely good person. I have the example of what it is to be a human and be
standard,
and be in that kind of white frame of reality versus the black. I don't really fully understand either, but I have an example in history of somebody being one. So if you look at who Christ was, he was the absence of his own identity. We are all natural sinners, which means naturally we want to overeat. Naturally, we want to have too much sex. Naturally, we want to do whatever our emotions tell us to do. The idea of being Christ-like and following Jesus is to give up stop focusing on what I want, because what I want clearly is not right. And if I start giving myself up piece by piece, all of these things that this illusion of who I am and what based on my wants that control my personality and who I've become, if I start giving these things up one by one, what replaces that? And that's the question. If I say I'm going to replace over drinking with just a healthy respect for myself and an idea of love for, and I'm not saying this stuff's easy. I mean, I'm a few in. But the point is that each piece you give up, what you're replacing it with is this foundational self-control. That foundational,
it's a spiritual compass that guides here.
yeah, we were saying moderation. It's spiritual, like moderation, where
Yeah.
it's like I can still like have a glass of wine with friends. But it's like, but I know it's not going to change me. All it's going to do is enhance my spirit.
Yeah, you're
Two
less
glass-
susceptible from going off the edge at that point.
Yeah, like one glass of wine, it's almost like it just enhances me. 2 glasses, I don't know if that's enhancing. 3, 4, 5, like you're getting further away.
You're getting hammered.
But Jesus made it clear, like you can have a glass of wine. That's not bad.
Yeah.
But it's moderation. Things can help, but moderation. Your body can fix itself in every way. Moderation. You want to do crack every day, you're going to notice that your body's not coming back as quick. Why? You don't have moderation. But what it comes down to is giving yourself up so that a better version can intercede. That's the idea, I believe, in what it is to follow Jesus, is to say, what does this guy represent? He represents purity. If, like you said, everything he did was just to help people. So what am I doing in my life? What am I motivated by? Why do I not feel capable of doing that? You dissect it, you break it down. Oh, some parts of it are, I've become distant from people. So I need to rewire myself to really love everybody around me genuinely as a brother and sister. Because no matter what, we all got some DNA to share. You know what I mean? It all comes from somewhere. So it's like, we're all really brothers and sisters in one way or another. So it's like, there has to be a rewiring of your brain to go, okay, if this is how Jesus was, I need to fully understand why I don't love everyone, why I don't want to help everybody, why I'm not that. And those parts of you give up because they don't help.
Well, yeah,
They hold you back.
I was going to kind of chime in on some of the stuff.
But just to end my whole thing,
Yeah,
I just
no.
remember the tip of it. The whole point is, When you give all of these things up, what you do is just open yourself up to God. And when you look at Jesus, what did he do? He did miracles. I think the message is, if you want to have a connection with God and operate properly, you need to retune yourself to the frequency that allows you to do so. So if you look at Jesus, even when he did miracles, he would say, Father, grant me your strength, grant me your power, grant me your, he would ask for it. But that was the big thing. He wasn't saying like, I just have power. He was showing people like there has to be a regrounding of, I am humble. I want to help this person. Father, lend me your power. And then it was granted. And almost implying that we have, and he said to his disciples that they had the power to cast out demons. They had the power to heal. As humans, we have, I fully believe we have the power to heal others spiritually. But we're not tuned properly to be able to harness the power that allows that to happen. That's why you see people walk around like, I have an issue and anxiety controls my life. And other people are like, anxiety to me is almost a myth. And then you have people who are like, I only feel pure love and all I do is good for others. And if I get killed for it, that's okay, because that's what evil does. And you're like, wow, that's really rooted and understanding, and like, I can feel your happiness and peace and grounding. And it's like, I don't know, who do you want to follow? You know, somebody who represents good, or just go anarchy and be like, well, I believe I can just live a life of chaos and all that other stuff doesn't affect me and doesn't matter at all. It's like there's a white and a black, there's an up and a down, there's a foundation to everything. And when you understand the Bible, it is that foundation. So there is no way to live outside of that without repercussion, because it's like, I'm going to do math and the numbers won't add up. Okay, I'm going to be over here when you fucking launch that rocket then. I don't want to be near you. Math matters. The way things work matter. And the way your mind works, it's like a rocket. There are precise measurements for how we're supposed to operate.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of give some closing final thoughts and talk to what both of you guys were saying. I think for me, in a similar way, I was, my parents were Christian. We grew up kind of going to church, not every Sunday, but like, once every 3 weeks or something like that. So I learned the stories of the Bible. I understood it and went to the lessons and all that. Kind of like a Protestant or not Catholic or anything, but, and then, as I went into adolescence, I kind of almost rejected it a little bit. Kind of didn't really, I didn't believe in Santa Claus anymore. That was like my perception of it at that time. And then eventually I kind of I actually went into like kind of a science route and started learning more about, kind of theorizing similar stuff to like Einstein's relativity and all this stuff. I was trying to understand the universe and understand just the world and what consciousness was and energy and all these stuff. And the more that I kind of learned about that, it kind of led me to the belief in a higher power. I'll call it just just monotheism in general. Like, there's no agnostics on Zeus. Like, there's not polygods or a pantheon out there. Like, there's either a god or there's not. And I was leaning more towards a presence that I'm, and at that time, even now, I think the Bible is a representation of man's, like best ability to, have something that transcends time and be able to explain these lessons in the most perfect and pure way without adulterating the message. But, I still took pieces of it with grains of salt. And I think, through the journey, I basically believed in a God, or the existence of a God, and kind of came to Christianity because that was the best fleshed out representation of what I kind of thought. And to kind of touch on what you're saying about the way that Jesus lived, you know, like Jesus was Jewish, you know, it's like you had the Old Testament, you had all that stuff in there. And the people of the time, they all were exposed to that stuff. And all the Christian stuff came later. But if you look at it all in context, you know, it's really just, it paints a picture, like you said, it's an example. You know, whether this person was God or not, it doesn't matter. Because the example is as close to God as you can get. And it's realistic. It's not, maybe you could say like miracles and stuff like that. That's God powers. But like we were just talking about, it's possible for us to kind of transcend the supernatural existence where people can be healed. You know, miraculous things can happen. So, you know, to take the supernatural out of it, whether he was God's son or not, doesn't matter to me. He lived life in a way that not only showed us all what, you know, your best, highest, perfect self should be, but it influenced other people. And you saw how other people reacted to what he was doing, even up until, you know, when he was killed. And it's like that triggered a whole wave of you know, religion across the entire world. So, you know, to me, I kind of found it inadvertently, and I think that that's the closest that I could come to a full explanation. But, you know, to get back to like the stuff we were talking about, polarity, you know, this is all stuff that I kind of saw, and it made sense to me in a way where now I understand that I need to live my life this way. And, you know, it's not just for it's not just, it goes beyond my own benefit, because there's things outside of my own life that I don't even know that I'm influencing that could come back to me, you know, kind of like almost in a karmic sense, where, you know, the more that I project this reality, both internally and externally, the more that everything is going to align to that path and to that, you know, the unfolding of that type of reality is what I want to work towards. So, you know, even, you know, I still sin. I'm not perfect on the outside, but I try to be as perfect as I can on the inside, because that's the one thing that we all have control over, is that if you kind of clean your garden up, in, you know, the mental garden, then everything else starts to fall into place. And I think anyone out there that's kind of on the fence or struggling with what they believe, or religious or not religious, you know, you don't have to necessarily be like a go to church everyday Christian, but you got to be open to the idea of benefiting your life and the people around you, you know, on a long-term basis. And you can even think outside of that, like into the afterlife and the continuation of a conscious existence. Because, you know, the beliefs you have now and the good that you do now, you're projecting out, like, you know, into infinity, essentially. And that's a better path than rejecting it. And you can kind of be on the fence, agnostic or whatever, but I think that at the end of the day, it's better to believe something than nothing, and, you know, to work towards something good based on examples and based on real perceptions and what we can see and measure. That is the way to go, versus, you know, stop believing in Santa Claus.
Yeah. If for my closing, I'll kind of go off yours. I was raised Catholic, but at a pretty young age went atheist, and stayed atheist for a good part of my life. And it was kind of the same thing. I started to just notice patterns that made sense, and I was like, immediately I knew, like, I shouldn't be able to find patterns in reality. You know, that's what you find that in video games, stuff that's made. You find patterns because there's precise orders of how things work. And I'm not, you know, a physicist. I'm not, you know, I don't work for NASA. Like, I don't know. Like, I should
real quick to chime in. Our life seems so complex, but like stuff like gravity, it's like broken down to very simple equations. Like this mass times the square root of the distance between them. It's like, that's gravity.
But even more simply, deep down,
simple.
But even more simply, deep down, we fully understand it on a level that we can't be taught.
Yeah.
We just don't fully understand how to access that part of ourselves, basically. Or really, we're fighting against ourselves so that part of us can't come out. But I went hardcore atheist, and it was kind of the same thing. I started noticing patterns, and I was like, if I'm noticing patterns, then that means this world has structure. This reality has structure, not the planet. All of reality has structure, and if it has structure, that means it's all coming from like a singular point. It has to, which would mean
source.
which brought me kind of the same thing, like a monotheist. I was like, there's something, and I kept asking the questions. It was through me wanting, an experience. Me saying, okay, if there's something out there, like I need to know, and it was through an experience with, I believe, God, where like I said, I felt a level of love I did not know existed. And I don't mean like I had great parents. I'm not saying like I didn't understand love. I'm saying the feeling I felt, I didn't think a human could feel. It wasn't just the emotion, it's what it did to me. My mind worked better. Everything was clear. It's like the emotion brought my mind into a singular point where I could interpret everything better, I could process better, to almost a supernatural level. And that's when I understood that all that time that I had been asking, like, how does this work? What is this reality? How do things work? You want to understand how the universe works. I went down the same path.
Yeah.
And I started getting those answers. But it was an experience with God that made me realize, and that's all it is when you have an experience with God, and that's why it's not something I could teach anybody. I can just emphasize, like, try to ask certain questions. I don't know what they are, but in your mind, want it. That's all I could say, because I really wanted it, to the point of me having a supernatural experience with God, where I know for a fact what happened to me was not something I could have done on my own. And I don't know how to recreate the experience. I don't. And what I experienced was such a power coursing through me that I was able to harness and control. It made me realize that all that time where I was trying to understand the universe, it meant nothing. In other words, I thought that understanding the universe made me spiritual, but all I was doing was learning the blueprints of the house I was living in. It's like, oh, you're still living in the house. You just understanding the blueprints of how the house was made does not make you any more or less living in a house. When that power took over, that's when I understood I'm a part of the blueprints, and there's a way that this all works together. So it's not about me understanding how all of this works. It's about me letting go and letting it work through me. It's the black and the white. The black is me trying to get to God. The white is me letting go and letting God come to me.
Yeah.
And that's my closing.
That's a good one. I suppose I have one too. I guess I'll lead, just like you led off of his, I'll lead off of yours. So the way, I guess it would have been cool to have been there discussing for the other 3 segments on spirituality. Who knows? Maybe it'll go on to more. Whoops. But when it comes to understanding the universe, that's also something I felt inclined to do after the experiences I had, like trying to learn theology or whatever. Felt a little bit... It's not that the Bible felt insufficient, but, at a certain point, just for, trying to make it and understand the world, like, okay, I need to learn something material so I can actually make money or whatever. Eventually you're drawn towards that sort of stuff, especially in any sort of, place where they need like formal jobs and you need to understand like on engineering or what have you. So, eventually you're going to be drawn towards understanding materialistic stuff. And it's kind of interesting because I was drawn towards astronomy when I was really young. Like, I was really interested in space growing up, which is material. And I was drawn towards, I guess, God and all that stuff a little bit later. I grew up Roman Catholic, but I was not initially really too focused on the theology. To be frank, I was a little bit too young to even understand half the stuff they were like doing sermons and like songs about. Like, I was listening to it, it did sound beautiful, but I was not like really understanding what the people were saying, if that makes sense. And so later on, I was able to sort of like comprehend that stuff. And so I've always been like dabbling in either, but some people dabble with the surface level engagements of either. I feel like with the unique perspective I've had available to myself, I've had the ability to like go deep on either end. And so you know, while some people might be very binary and they're thinking like atheist equals materialistic, and it's like, oh, you're only concerned about utilitarianism and reduction, you know, you try to reduce all of spirituality to biochemistry, and then you leave no room for like the sort of transcendental conscious experience of like love and all that stuff. You're just like, love is just chemicals. And I don't agree with that perspective at all. And then there's sort of the inverse perspective, which is like, well, matter doesn't exist. This is all just like spiritual, like kind of like Ghostbusters, like space ghost goop, like the green ghost, whatever that's called.
Like a simulation kind of thing.
Yeah, like the Slimer. It's just kind of like ectoplasm. It's not actually real.
Made of energy.
Technically, you're not actually touching this. It's like there's a small micro gap of like nano.
I love that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, I find it interesting too to like see where the hair's split or where the line's drawn in the sand or where people try to. And you know, while I find it interesting, to me, the conscious experience itself is the boundary between the material, which is like, you know, physicality and, you know, all of that stuff, and then the conscious experience is sort of only understood through one's interactions with other people, or one's interaction with other, you know, even if it's not people, if it's like animals or I guess energy. You know, there is almost a physical aspect to energy, I would say, which is like light, which is technically, you know, by what some people define as like material, you know, or plasma, you know, like the sun has plasma and that emits light and all that stuff because it's lots of physical reactions at the core of the sun exploding, tons of nuclear explosions at the very heart of the sun all the time. And so, you know, to that, in that sense, if you perceive it like that, it is material, but I almost don't really like to put words on it. I like to consider them as like abstract quantities. So there's like, you know, not to be too like binary, but, you know, as you were saying, like there's light and there's dark. There's like these hard to define abstract quantities of like, you know, a black hole is almost the inverse of a star. A star is emitting light constantly and exploding perpetually, and a black hole is always taking things in, and it's like getting darker and darker, and it doesn't really emit anything except maybe Hawking radiation. And so
well, they're also both two sides of the same coin as well, because
Yeah.
the sun can create a black hole and be the inverse of what it is. Something that emits light versus something that takes in light.
yeah.
I never thought about that.
I see these patterns everywhere. Like, you know, I didn't want to. Sometimes it would get a little bit overwhelming the more I would think about it, because I already like studied a lot of the stuff prior to getting into the more theological, metaphysical, sort of abstract stuff. And so as I got into that more, I would find myself referring back to those things that I had learned way earlier on. It's like, okay, I see this sort of dimensionality here. There's one thing here. There's the inverse there. Matter, antimatter, gravity, I guess supposedly anti-gravity, and even something like nutrients. There is apparently a concept of something called anti-nutrients, which is, as the name sounds, it's like something that is anti-nutritious.
Black hole of nutrients. you eat something and it starts to
Something that
strain.
takes nutrients from you.
You're like, help
You just
me.
shrink into a point. No, but
I
it
need
does draw
water.
away from your health, apparently. And so, you know, I think about it in this very abstract sense
called
these
fentanyl.
days. Yeah.
Strictly
Crack of
purified
physics.
water does.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No
Purified
minerals.
water will take minerals from your body to.
Minerals bad, right? That's what that's why some people, they remineralize their water when they purify
You
it.
should, yeah, you definitely should, because
Now let's get into anti-minerals.
if you have excess minerals in your organs and you have no minerals in the water, then they're going to want to move to the gradient.
That's interesting.
But
Yeah.
sorry, not to interrupt.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that just kind of falls in the point is like, there's these very two hard to define abstract quantities, and you can sort of visualize them, but if you try to define it as a particular thing, you're going to have a hard time because it's not limited to one definition. It's like a multi-dimensional definition that you need to define these, and it's almost easier to just say, okay, it's like an abstract, like very light thing, like you can use analogies to describe these better than you can like a rigid definition, because a rigid
'cause it's-
definition is a singular reference point.
It's like having to explain an entire thought process 3 different ways
Yep.
in one.
Yep.
It's like it's that's the idea of like you can't understand God
It's too
because
convoluted.
he's so layered that the concept itself there's nothing for you to hold on to.
Yeah,
You know, it's
we're
like-
used to our primitive languages and numbers and all these concepts.
Just a
that
metaphor.
we can experience, but like, to conceptualize zero, or to conceptualize infinity, or to, to conceptualize being a part of a conscious existence that's everybody, all at once.
It's so many different conversations to
Different
explain
time.
one idea.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a big topic. The
Yeah.
series might go on a few more
So
episodes.
that was the way I was gonna end it. I didn't really have a good way to end it. I might have just tangented,
No, you're
added
good, man.
another 2 hours. I like to yap, but yeah, that's the way that I perceive it. And so whenever I go into any sort of conversation on spirituality, that is usually the back end sort of process when I come up with anything to say. Is like that's what I'm operating off of, is that kind of abstract,
Yeah.
fundamental understanding.
And I think that's a
I
good.
think in a lot of ways that's how we should all operate, because again, it's like everything. Reality is crazy enough on its own. It's not something that
Yeah.
I could just get an epiphany and be like, I can explain this now. It's layered so much that you need to have these other elements to help you pull it all together. You know what I mean?
You need to be inquisitive and open, and
If you become too rigid and too structured, you won't be able to take in the gravity of what it all means together.
and don't. If you reject it, then you'll never find what you're looking for.
True.
But anyway, guys, thanks for watching us. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Join us every Wednesday for the live show. Be a part of it in the chat. But let us
Until
know what you
next
think.
time,
Yeah.
meta perspective out.
Meta Perspective Podcast.